Amen, brothers. It's good to have you with us here tonight for our seventh session of our Choosing Presence workshop. This week, we'll be diving into the courage to stop negative thinking and gossip, the awareness that we take our life situations and turn them into problems. So again, I hope you guys, really glad to see you guys, and I hope you've had a good Thanksgiving holiday, however you celebrated. Want to apologize. I didn't get out the reminder for tonight's session until the last minute, so we may have some men joining us a little late. I know sometimes it's helpful to have a reminder. We're all leading very busy lives. So I'm going to open us up tonight, bring us into this space with a poem. And it's a Rainer Maria Rilke poem. And I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Here we go. It's called Widening Circles, and we'll listen to it twice.
I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I have been circling around God, that primordial tower. I've been circling for thousands of years, and still I don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song?
All right, brothers, we'll play that again, but I want to let you know why I chose the poem for this evening. The past couple of weeks, we've been dealing with first resistance, and now we're dealing with negative thinking and gossip. And I think this part of our program, Jim is working in the book to kind of let us know some of the things that keep us from actually becoming present or staying in the present moment in our lives. And in this poem, in the first stanza, I really feel like Rilke is saying, when he's present, he lives his life in widening circles and becomes more and more present. And as he becomes more and more present, there's no differentiation between him and sort of the essence of life. And in that place, he doesn't even have this strong sense of self that we all cling to. He says, am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? So with that explanation, let me play that for you one more time.
I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I have been circling around God, that primordial tower. I've been circling for thousands of years, and still I don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song?
Brothers, I hope you like that poem. We'll have that on the website there for you to revisit. So now I'm going to invite you guys to offer 2 or 3 dedications to our council here this evening. So please feel free to unmute yourself and offer a dedication.
I dedicate this to my friend Bill Parks, who's in the hospital, and a dear friend for a long time.
All in.
I dedicate this to a great friend of mine, Dave Tillman. I turned 80 years old a week ago today, and the best gift I've had is his friendship and his love.
All in.
All in.
Thank you, brothers, for your dedications, and we bring all of them into the circle and all the ones that were unspoken as well. All right, guys, let's do a couple more introductions. Let's see if we can meet a few more guys. I think most everybody has had a chance, but there are a few men that we have yet to hear from. And one of the ones, I saw him on here earlier. I just want to make sure he's with us. Tim Walters. You want to tell us just where you're from and what brought you to the practice of presence, how it's going for you?
Yes, sir. I am from Cleveland, Ohio. I lived there all my life. I have a family of 8 children. I'm a widower. 8 children, 24 24 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. I've retired now for the 3rd time to focus my time on the grandkids and the great-grandkids, working with that. I've tried this whole idea of the meditating and the breathing a number of different times before, and I think, like I said earlier, in our small group one, the experience working with Brian, respect what he does. And I also have been involved in a couple small groups with other people from Illumina, and really respect the guys that are here, and felt that doing this with people that maybe had some similarity to me as far as needs and wants and inabilities and so on would really help me move forward, and it has. So I'm pleased to be here.
Thank you, Tim.
Complete.
Here. Dave Meadows.
All right, yeah, I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and several years ago, a friend introduced me to Illumin and began participating in Saturday morning Zoom meetings, and it's really been a fantastic resource for me. And through that, found out about this opportunity, and I've struggled off and on with anxiety over the years, and so certainly saw this as a great opportunity for me. And so I'm really glad that I took it and really enjoyed it very much. So that's kind of the basics for me. I'm all in.
Here. Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much, brothers. All right. So now we're going to do our 10-minute practice of presence meditation. It'll take about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll begin our program this evening.
We start each day with the practice of presence and bring in stillness. That is our foundation that we return to throughout the day. Practice this exercise in a quiet, comfortable place, if possible, either sitting on the floor or in a chair with your back straight. Aim to work up to 15 to 20 minutes. There are very specific reasons why we practice presence the way we do. Our experience is that it makes access to stillness easier and deeper. We put our hand over our heart because this helps release a calming hormone called oxytocin. We praise God because it humbles us. We are aware that we cannot change ourselves without experiencing God's Spirit within us. Our core intention is always to connect with our vibrant inner life, which is God's spiritual energy. Keep in mind that you may slowly say a sacred word, such as Yahweh or Jesus, on each in-breath, which makes it easier to actually take those long, slow breaths. To begin, sit quietly and put your hand over your heart. Praise God and ask Him what you would like Him to do for you inside. For example, Father, all goodness comes from you. Let your peace flow through me. Take a deep, slow breath in, breathing deeply through your nose. Follow the breath as it fills your lungs up with air. Expand your chest until you cannot take in any more air. Release the breath slowly out through your nose until all the air is expended. The out breath should be longer than the in breath. On the slow out breath, you should soon start to feel stillness and get a taste of your vibrant inner life. It is when you start to become aware of it on some level. Focus on the breath with each slow intake and each slow outtake. Focusing on the breath is essential in the practice of presence. When we are consciously focusing on our breath, we cannot think at the same time. When we are consciously present, there are no worries, anxieties, or stress, no lack of self-esteem, because none of that exists in this present moment. It only happens in our unobserved mind, when we are unconsciously living through memory or anticipation. it is important to continue taking 3 deep conscious breaths once an hour or more throughout the day. This is how the practice of presence teaches us, through the stillness we create and what we experience inside. That vibrant inner life is God's spirit within us, our inner intelligence. When we start the day this way, it becomes our foundation. We know exactly what we're looking for then and throughout the day. This is the first part of inner conditioning, which is essential. That is what renews us throughout the day. You have completed the morning practice. Now continue taking 3 conscious breaths or more every hour to renew yourself.
So I'm going to open the floor to Jim, who has an invitation about practicing presence while you're on the move, perhaps.
Good evening, everyone. Since we made the app, obviously doing my morning practice and the 3 questions during the day, what I started to do actually in my car for years on my phone, especially when I'm going to the jails, I'd always put my morning practice, and I'd listen to it on the way to the jails. But what I realized recently was even more significant than that is taking the app in the car and doing the 3 questions. Am I present now? Deep breath in, slow breath out. How do I feel inside? Same. And do I have a sense of calm or peace at some level? And then it goes into the music, which is very sort of keeps you in a meditative state, even though you're driving. But it tends to be effortless to do. There's certainly no resistance in doing it. We're in the car. A lot of times you're in the car, we can get ourselves quite anxious at times. And doing that, reducing the resistance, and just having a sense of calm and peace while we're driving was really quite, even after all these years, it was something new to me to start doing that. And I encourage everyone actually to do it. What I like to do is, I assume all of you have the app, do it this week in your car, and let's get some feedback. Because as far as my experience goes, it's quite significant in practicing presence. Because, see, with all the noise we have going on in our head, unfortunately, it diminishes our openness to spirit. By staying close to the present moment, we don't get too far. We don't get lost in our thoughts very often if we stay close to the present moment. Peace.
Peace. Thank you, Jim. Chester, you wanted to add on to that a little bit.
Yeah, for me, since I've been practicing presence, and most recently, and all of us do it, you wake up in the middle of the night and you've got all these thoughts going through your head on something going on in the day or something that happened previously, and you can't get back to sleep. And what I started doing is taking, if I can't get right back to sleep, taking 3 breaths, just as Jim spoke of, right? And I encourage you to try that, and because what's happening for me, even last night was a good example. I woke up with a dream and had a challenging Thanksgiving weekend, and there were things on my mind around that, and I just couldn't get back to sleep. And I took 3 breaths, and I'll tell you, within 3-4 minutes, I was back asleep, and that's happened many times for me, and it's really comforting. So it's not only to do in the daytime, but if you wake up at night, try it. It really does work for me.
Thank you, Chester. And brothers, I'd just like to share too some of the ways that the practice may evolve for you over time. At least for me, it's continuing to evolve. Is that this year I was diagnosed with a heart issue called tachycardia, and I had intermittent bouts of what that is your heart will race. And I had over the years some bouts of that, but usually it would correct itself pretty quickly. But I don't know, factors of stress and age and things like that, I've had it where it's kind of persistent, have had to seek treatment. And as such, it's real important that I monitor my pulse and I monitor my blood pressure and things like that. And I've found it very, very useful to go back to the breathing. The breathing is part of the meditation, the practice. taking those at least 3 deep breaths, sometimes more. And for me, I can really notice a huge difference in my pulse and my blood pressure. They quickly go back into normal ranges just with 2 or 3 breaths. And I usually take them in through the nose and out through the nose, or if I go in through the nose, I go out slower through the mouth. And my pulse will drop 15 beats a minute, and my blood pressure will drop 10, 15 points if I do that. So it's been very helpful for me on that level too, to kind of remember that aspect of being present. So we just wanted to share that with you. The guys that have been practicing this for a while, it's going to continue to develop and evolve for you over the years. And if you can't break down some of the resistance that we have to practicing, you'll find other ways that it can be meaningful and helpful in your life. So with that, let's jump into chapter 7, how the courage to stop negative thinking and gossip. I know I told you guys last week that chapter 6 was probably one of the longer chapters. This chapter is actually longer. Of course, there's a lot to be said about resistance, and I think that this chapter builds on that, talking about the ways that we try to keep from being aware, or bringing our awareness into the present. And 2 of those ways is our negative thinking and gossip. So we're gonna have a little bit of a conversation with Jim about this chapter. So Chester, I'm going to let you begin.
Yeah, Jim, in the chapter, you talk about compulsive thinking that you refer to as thought chatter. Can you tell us more? Can you tell us more about that?
I think a good way to explain it is, I mean, all of us, especially in the city, we always see people, unfortunately, they're walking around talking to themselves. Okay. And as I observed that years ago, I realized that's actually the same thing I'm doing, except I'm not voicing it. But I'm always rerunning my story in my head over and over again. And the realization of that really awakened me to the fact that I don't really have a whole lot of control of what's going on in my head at all. And that obviously led me to even practice, as I say, the most fortunate thing I did in my life was make presence primary in my life. And it's that compulsive thinking that, first of all, takes us out of reality. That's the biggest part. And it's only by creating space. And when we create space, we internalize awareness through our own experience. And that's what changes everything. Once we internalize awareness through our own experience, it becomes very clear to us that most of our thoughts are absolutely useless. A good example, 90% of all the thoughts each of us have today, we had yesterday. And we just recycle them over and over and over again. And first of all, we create our problems. Our problems, it's not the circumstances in our life, it's the content of our mind. And by dwelling on our problems over and over again, we become the problem because we made the problem personal. And we do it always. And it's that internalizing our awareness through our own experience that changes that. So that's why we stress constantly. Obviously, the foundation is the morning practice, but the hourly practice is so essential, because that's what keeps us close to the present moment and gives us, throughout the day, at different times, a sense of God's spiritual being at some level when we create space through stillness. So the chattering is it's a dysfunction that we all have that doesn't change until our awareness changes.
Thank you, Jim. One of the things when I first went through the book and I was reading this chapter, when I read the term gossip, I have to admit, I started thinking about, what came to mind for me was, like some old sitcom or something, where some old ladies were gossiping about this or that. Thinking about Andy Griffith's show or something like that, Aunt B or something like that, getting on the telephone. And so the word gossip just seemed a little strange to me. Of course, it makes, more sense now in this context, but I'm going to ask you, what are the reasons, help us to understand some of the reasons that we might gossip and the ways that we might do it and not even be aware of it.
Well, first of all, gossip is the worst form of unconsciousness. The pain it causes is not only to the people we gossip about, it's to ourselves. And, we gossip to what? Make us feel good about ourselves as we put other people down, or the need for attention, or just our inner negativity. It's a cancer. And instead of building trust in each other, we build walls between each other. And it's in our society, it's the underlying almost evil in our society, in a family, in the workplace, in our churches, in our parishes. There is so much gossip going on, well, naturally in politics, that's all they do is gossip. But in our daily lives, if you take the biggest issues we have with our family, it's always at the center of it is gossip. We have a simple rule in my company, and it's this. When we hire someone, we tell them this. We expect you to do the job. We're going to teach you our process. And we expect you to do the process as we teach you. If you don't do the process, obviously we're going to help you. One thing we will not tolerate is gossip. You will be fired if you gossip. It's that simple, because it is truly a cancer. And the only way to stop it is there has to be an alternative. There has to be a contrast. And God has told us the contrast, be still and know that I am God. It's that before and after that gives us the strength, increases our awareness to the point where it becomes obvious to us the damage we cause our brothers and sisters and the damage we cause ourselves.
And Jim, I think you already explained it, but how do you break the cycle over time of gossip and negative thinking?
And see, everything we do, we've been talking about these weeks, and to the end is, it always comes back to inner conditioning ourselves spiritually. We're not going to have confidence in the power of God's spiritual presence through stillness with intention unless we do it consistently. As we said last week, all of us have had the experience of giving unconditional love to someone or receiving unconditional love to someone. And we know this, when we're giving unconditional love to someone, it's effortless, because we don't all of a sudden matter, okay? Our insecure and fear-filled ego isn't directing us anymore. We're not comparing or saying, oh, well, I can't do that. That's too much time, or that's too much money, or whatever the situation is. Only that clear before and after changes our heart. And if we change our heart, we change our actions. But we're not going to have confidence in it until we actually realize we're not doing it. We are, through stillness, with intention, allowing God to change us from the inside. That's where the power comes from.
Thank you, Jim. One of the sections that really spoke to me in this chapter was, it comes under the heading thinking versus doing. And in this section, you quote Father Richard Rohr, who says, Scripture clearly says in many ways that God helps those who trust in God, not those who help themselves. We need to be told that very strongly because of our do-it-yourself orientation. It takes applying the brakes, letting go of our own plans, allowing another, and experiencing power from a larger source to really move to higher awareness. Otherwise, there is no real transformation. And this is this really speaks to me in many ways. Those of us that have gone through the men's rites of passage, one of the lessons that we're challenged by is to say, our life does not belong to us. We belong to life, and to see ourselves in a much broader context. And that's one of the challenges of of becoming aware in this practice. Can you speak a little bit to that, thinking versus doing?
I'm sure all you men, when it first started, and we first started talking about practicing presence, I'm sure many of you right away went to, well, yeah, let me think about some other practice I've done, or is this like that, or maybe I could do this a little differently than they're talking about. And we do that all the time because, as men, number one, we don't like to be told this is what you should do. Okay, let's face it. That prior to 25 years ago, I was, as I told you, completely dysfunctional, which I wouldn't say 25 years ago, which I am not ashamed to say now. Okay, but when we come down to it, everything that matters to us can only be found through stillness with intention. To believe, because we want to do ourselves, okay? We want to be in control, okay? Now, as we do the practices, and we truly get humbled every day, because we do have a clear before and after, and throughout the day we get humbled too. And as we get humbled, we realize just how dysfunctional our actions are. And in many, many cases, they are dysfunctional, okay? But we don't really have the strength to admit it, and we certainly don't have the strength to change it. So only the surrendering, the admission that I can do nothing on my own without God's spiritual energy. But many of us, we don't believe we have a choice. That's what this class is all about. It's the choice we all have forever. It never changes. God never leaves the present moment. We leave the present moment. And we could say in this class, maybe there's a number of men that hasn't done really hasn't done the practices very often or consistently. Okay, start today doing it consistently. And what you'll find is you do it, and like we talked about last week, and you think, well, this really, I don't know if this is helping me. Do it. And what'll happen? That clear before and after will happen. The only reason it's not happening to all of us, myself included, when it doesn't happen, is because I am stopping too soon. I'm breathing and thinking at the same time. And we're stubborn, let's face it. But once we really understand that we are not in control, well, the 5 truths at the MROP, 1, life is hard. 2, I'm going to die. 3, I am not in control. 4, I am not in control. My life, when my life is not about me, I am not in control. The 5th, I can't think of at the moment. But once we actually are aware of how true those 5 truths are, changes everything. Because we know we can come back. We can come back to the center. We can come back to peace. We can come back to inner confidence through surrendering, through stillness and attention.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah. You know, brothers, I'm going to go a little off script here. We have some time this evening. We're doing pretty well. So I was going to invite the men present here, at least for 1 or 2 men to ask a question of Jim. And, you know, you can ask about this chapter, The Courage to Stop Negative Thinking and Gossip. You can ask about any of the other chapters you've read so far, or you can just, you know, get some general feedback from Jim. So if anybody has anything that they'd like to bring in the circle,
Yeah.
I know this surprised you. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
forgot one thing. It's surprisingly what I forgot is I'm not that important.
Right.
That's the main one. My ego probably said, don't say that.
Those 5 essential truths. I mean, it's so transformative, this practice, and of course the MROP ritual. It really does over time reorient your whole approach to life and understanding of our role in life. So that's great, Jim. So again, anybody who maybe want to, you can either use the reactions at the bottom of the your Zoom window to raise your hand, or you can just get my attention. I've got the everybody on screen. So let me first go to Dave Metters. Dave, unmute yourself if you haven't already.
Okay. Yeah, and I think this was maybe from chapter 6 or earlier, but I wonder if Jim could speak to the notion of acceptance. That's something I'm learning about and kind of struggling with. And I think y'all even mentioned Richard Rohr's book, Everything Belongs, and I've got that and I've started rereading it, but I've just started it. And what I struggle with is, I mean, I kind of get the notion of accepting things as they are in the present, but there's something in me that really wants to chafe against, kind of being Captain Obvious, accepting things that are just so wrong, like things that are going on in the world or in my life. So just kind of that wrestling with accepting in a positive way, but not accepting, you know, not being passive about evil, if that makes sense. So that's my question.
Yeah. Acceptance is very powerful for this reason. What we accept no longer has power over us. What we resist has power over us. And it's, even though it's a very simple sentence, it is so powerful when we actually do it. Because when we do not accept, when we resist, and we're not accepting what is, we're accepting what is not. So to me, acceptance is everything. It frees us. Once you can accept, no matter what. Now, I don't mean you're going to accept and you're going to be full of joy. You can still be in pain. You still have to accept it. Okay? You can be depressed. You would say, okay, I'm depressed. And watch the difference, what happens. God's grace will put a peace around our pain, or put a peace around whatever issue is in our life, which we can't do ourselves. It's impossible. Acceptance is powerful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jim. Noah, I believe you had a question as well. We'll do that.
Yeah, acceptance is a good segue, because one of the things that I've had to accept is the fact that as I get deeper into my practice, and particularly with respect to this chapter of the gossip and the negative thinking, I've had to push some people, create some boundaries for myself. There were people in my life who, I love dearly, but it was the dynamic in the relationships has been unhealthy. And the only way to stay in those relationships is to not change, to keep being the person that I'm expected to be in those relationships. And since I've stopped doing that, it's been hard with a couple of folks. I'm talking mostly about my family of origin. A dynamic's been going on for decades, that I'm not participating in it anymore because I'm changing the way I approach my life. But I've accepted that. But I think what's hard, and I guess my question is it just a matter of time? And maybe some of those relationships will evolve and come back, or maybe they won't. I don't know. I'm kind of answering my own question in a way, but that's a hard part, and I don't know what you have to say about it, Jim. But maybe you could take over where I leave off.
I'll give you an example. We have a big family. Sunday dinner at our house is 22 people. This is all my kids, all my grandkids, their spouses. Now, this is forever. In our family, everyone knows you are not allowed to gossip, period. There is, if you have an issue with your sister or your brother, or your mother or your father or your cousin or whatever, you have to face them, period. And if you face someone else, they're going to tell you, whoop, better talk to her or him. And we enforce it very, very strongly all these years for one reason. It's a poison. It's an absolute poison. And we have that's my immediate family. Now, our whole family is a huge family. Probably 100 people when we do a Christmas party, which we're doing at my daughter's house in a few weeks. And that's everyone. Okay. Now, I can't say the rest of the family enforces that in their family. Okay. But I can say this. We enforce it in our family. And there's no better way than snapping people out of it other than the example of not doing it. Mm-hmm. And again, you have to accept other people. You got gossipers, you got gossipers. Mm-hmm. But, it's, hey, I don't do that. I'm sorry. And I tell them why I don't do it. So it's a hard one. But again, acceptance is powerful. And once we do accept that we will not tolerate gossip because gossip is only going to poison us, hey, God will bring us through it. Again, there'll be around our decision, there's going to be a sense of peace. Okay. We may be a little upset about it, or at times even impatient or angry even, but we got to rely that God is going to take us through it. And I say that, if I said 25 years ago, 30 years ago, well, I know God's going to take me through this. I had no idea what I was going to say. I had no idea what that meant. None. Zero. Because without a clear before and after, I was the kind of guy to say, I have faith, but is God going to be actually directing my life? 30 years ago, I said, no, that would be impossible. Completely impossible. Today, I don't want to live unless he's directing my life, because there is no life without God's spiritual being. And he's given, and the thing is, he's given us, everyone has equal access. It's a miracle for each of us if we choose it. Hope.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. And thank you, brothers, for your questions. We're going to try over the next couple weeks to get a couple more of those in. We know that it's important to be able to share in a large group setting as well. And we want to encourage you, if you do have questions, to reach out, email answers@choosingpresence.org. That email will get to me, Chester, and Jim. So if you do have questions, or you want to share something about your practice, anything like that, or your experience so far, please do use that email. So now I'm going to ask, before we do our breakout councils, Chester to read the Making the Meaning of the Message for Chapter 7.
Yep. So how many times have we allowed our mind to literally run away with us and let all those negative thoughts take us over? Before making the practice of presence primary in my life, it must have happened to me 1,000 times. And the worst part is, we don't know how it happens. It all begins in our unobserved mind because we are not in touch with how we feel inside. When I first started practicing presence, I can remember getting the feeling that I stopped thinking, that if I stopped thinking, I was going to miss something. And I was right. What I was going to miss was all the misery I caused myself through all of the compulsive and repetitive negative thinking I was doing when I was in an unconscious state. The practice of presence stops that negative cycle by making us aware of how our negative thinking may be playing out in our external world, such as when we gossip, which often creates turmoil all around us and creates a barrier to peace. The practice of presence also makes us aware of the unease building up inside, which often leads to inner chaos. Through the practice of consciously breathing throughout the day, we bring ourselves back to the present moment, the only reality there is. And we then realize we have a choice. When we are in an unconscious state, living through memory or anticipation, that is a false reality we have created in our own mind. In that state, we do not realize we have a choice. That is how the practice of presence teaches us. As Eckhart Tolle says, it is a terrible affliction not to be able to stop our mind from thinking. The practice of presence gives us that choice.
Thank you, Chester. And as I set up the breakout rooms, I'm going to ask Chester to remind us of the 4 intentions of counsel.
Yep. As I've mentioned before, the 4 intentions of counsel is listen from the heart, speak from the heart, be spontaneous and authentic, and then be lean of expression. By the time we're done next week, we should all have that memorized. and that's how we start every Illumined Council, and that's how we run all of our meetings.
All right, welcome back, brothers. Hope you had a good council experience this evening. For next week, we want to remind you to read chapter 8, maybe a couple times. We All Want Peace, it's called. And I'll have the journaling questions up on the website tomorrow, and for chapter 8. And I will also have the video from today, probably by Wednesday, out on the website, along with any additional materials and things like that. I just want to remind you again to check out the updated Practicing Presence app, whether you have an Apple or an Android device. It should be updated and ready for you to use or check out. And if you have any questions, reach out to myself, Chester, or Jim. The best email is answers@choosingpresence.org, but you also see Chester and my email on the messages that we send out. So our time together has come to a close this evening, and so please extinguish your candles if you have them, and let us observe a moment of silence, and you can depart when you're ready. And of course, anybody who wants to hang around afterwards can do so.